So we are back in the studio in London, in Soho, and I'm here recording season 16. I can't actually believe we're on season 16. It's mad. But Food for Thought is here, and we've got a whole incredible lineup of guests talking everything from gut health to our skin to the environment, from male anorexia. We've got some huge topics in this series. Don't miss out. This week's Food for Thought sees the, oh my goodness, amazing, inspiring Jono Lancaster challenge the beauty-obsessed world that we live in. He became his own self-love hero. He's an author of the most amazing, moving book, Not All Heroes Wear Capes. And I had the privilege of previewing and reading this book before it went out, and it blew me away. He shares the highs and lows of his life, how he accepts himself, his differences. Jono's the co-founder of the Love Me, Love My Face Foundation. He's just absolutely incredible. He discourages bullying, prejudice. On top of this, he's well known for a wide range of appearances of motivational speaking. He's an incredible speaker. So let's welcome Jono. Hello, Jono.
Hi, how are we doing?
Oh my goodness, we're amazing. I've been buzzing to get you on the podcast, and I think a good place to start today's conversation is, first of all, the fact that I think when I first kind of connected with you, I'd seen you on Fern's podcast, but of course you've written the book and I got to read it.
You did. You were one of the first people.
I was one of the first people to read it, and it stuck with me. It was like I kept thinking about it. I can't describe it. It had that profound impact on me. So I thought, let's get you on. I don't know if you want to start by just saying a little bit about yourself and how this whole journey began, I suppose. Big question.
Big question. And when I found out that you'd read my book, honestly, it was terrifying in the best way. Like, honestly, it gave me butterflies of like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is exciting, but people are reading this now. And this was something that, you know, all these years ago when I first started talking about my journey, I never imagined that it would get to this point. I'd been on this journey when I was 21. I was reading a celebrity gossip magazine, and the articles were all about image and all about looks. And I came to this section where the magazine had circled over celebrities' bodies, wrinkles, cellulite, and it was called the Circle of Shame. And it just angered me and saddened me that I grew up questioning about my appearance, whether I fit into this world, whether I'd belong, whether I'd be able to find happiness, love. And these articles just didn't help. No. So that motivated me to write a story. Yeah. And luckily I was in a good place when I read that article. And I was like, this is me, this is my face, and I chuffing love it. And yeah, it's just kind of snowballed for me.
Because I guess the start to life, so for everyone listening, it's Treacher Collins Syndrome. Do you want to explain what that is? But equally, you have joyous memories of your childhood. You have the most incredible family. Could you share a bit of that with us?
Yeah, so I was born with Treacher Collins, which it always affects the face. So I don't have any cheekbones. Mm-hmm. That's why my eyes appear the way they do. I call them my little Bart Simpson ears. Yeah. And aesthetically, they're really cute. They don't get cold in winter. They don't pop on aeroplanes. But yeah, I can't hear it, so I do wear a hearing aid. And for me, that's my Treacher Collins. For others, it may affect their breathing. They may need a feeding tube due to the narrowing of the airway. There was no family history of Treacher Collins. So when I was born, it was a shock to my birth parents, and they decided that we needed to go our separate ways.
Let's just touch on, I know that you've spoken so publicly about this before, but it's a difficult conversation, first of all, to start. But, you know, one of my best friends is adopted, and I think adoption is the most incredible process in the world. And what I love is that you spoke about it like you were chosen by your mother.
Yeah, as a child, I got to celebrate my birthday, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I would celebrate my adoption day on the 18th of May, 1990.
Oh, and that's your tattoo on your... I love that.
Yeah. We had a party every year, and all my mates were like, how come you get two parties? Like, two birthdays, because people would bring me presents, people would bring... we would have cake, and it was my gotcha day, and I was like, well, my mum went to the hospital, and out of all the kids, my mum chose me. And I absolutely love that story. Like, your mums and dads got stuck with you, but my mum chose me.
Yeah.
And I loved that story. And I didn't really understand the whys or the significance that would impact me later on in life. And then, you know, as I got older, it was a lot to process.
Yeah. I don't think... What amazes me about you is that this journey you are on right now, the processing isn't something that I think a lot of people have this perception, oh, you go to a few therapy sessions, it's processed. It's not, is it?
No.
It's long.
It's throughout my life, and I wrote about it in my book, there's been so many times where I'm like, oh, I'm in a good place. I've done this work, I've done therapy, I've spoken about that, I've accepted that, I'm in a good place. And then something will happen that'll trigger something else. And I'm like, oh, that's back. And then he'll get me working on something else. But one of the things that I love about myself right now is that I sit in those places. Yeah. In the past, when something happened I was struggling to deal with, you know, I would try and drink it away, I would try and sleep with it away, I would try and find those external things because I don't want to deal with this right now. And that just delayed my healing, but helped me bottle it up. Whereas now I just sit there and I'm like, okay, what are we feeling?
Wow.
And it's not easy. No. And it's not nice. It's pretty crappy at times.
Yeah.
But when you get through it, the stuff that comes out of that place is pretty powerful.
Wow. It's... Anyone would find it difficult to sit with their feelings because, do you know, we don't. And I can only relate to it in the work we do with our nutrition clients, in the fact that we are distracted every single day by something. You have to physically make yourself step away from those distractions to address your thoughts and feelings. A lot of us are not aware we don't do that. And that's work that I'm assuming, yeah, it's obviously very difficult to implement. But what age were you when, I suppose, because you said, you know, childhood was good, you had an amazing family, which was fantastic. But when did things change? When did you become more aware of body image? And of course, the fact you have Treacher Collins, has that always been something that other children embraced, or have there been difficult times with that?
I had always been popular at school. I was daft. I was just a big kid, would do anything for anybody. Wasn't so good at setting boundaries. I was definitely a people pleaser. And as a child, that wasn't too bad, but those behaviours definitely haven't helped during adulthood, especially when it comes to relationships.
Do you think it was like a coping strategy?
So in my teenage years, yes, there were isolated moments of people being unkind and some deliberate acts of unkindness, and I've spoken about them in my book as well. But through my teenage years, I was popular and I was proud of my mum who adopted me. She's my biggest hero. She just instilled this. She just gave me this beautiful foundation to live my best life. But in my teenage years, I started having a look around the world that I lived in and my environment, and I didn't see anybody with a visible difference. You know, none of my sports stars that I followed had visible differences. The films that I watched, the people with visible differences, you know, were villains or they had negative experiences. And that's when I started to question, image does play a big part in life, or in my life, and where am I going to fit in? And I would look in the mirror and I would just stare at my face, and I'd sit there with my eyes, you know, like imagining what my eyes would be like if I had a face like everybody else's. And yeah, that torment and that self-talk that I had with myself in my teenage years just became very dark. And yeah, that's when I really, really started to struggle with life. And then I started thinking about my birth story and my birth parents and that. And again, I wasn't talking about it, so I was creating these answers and these stories in my head, and they were just very, very negative.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I know it's not an easy thing to talk about. There's a term that I actually discovered in therapy recently called hypermentalism, and it's where we sometimes imagine what other people are thinking all the time, but to such a deep, sensitive level that it becomes all-consuming, those thoughts. And you've mentioned as well, that you even got close to suicidal thoughts at one point in your life. For anyone listening, obviously there's a trigger warning at the front of the podcast, but it is possible, isn't it, to reframe thoughts with support? But there's no magic switch.
There is no magic switch. And this is one of the things why I ask my question, what do you love about yourself? Because self-talk is so important. And as a child, we are so good at self-talk, being really, really positive. Oh, I'm going to play for England football team one day. I'm going to be a singer. I'm going to be a doctor. Oh, I can do anything. And it's amazing, and it's a superpower. But as we get older, life just sucks it out of us. And then throw in, stuff that happens in life. It's so hard to get it back. And that self-talk that I have has just been one of my biggest allies, my biggest support systems. And that's been huge. And when I talk about my own suicidal thoughts, they started when I was in my teenage years. And there was a moment when I nearly got hit by a taxi early hours at morning. And I had that realization for the very first time that I wanted that taxi to hit me. And then from then on, and even later on in years, I'm like, I want to be in a car accident. I want my life to end in some way. And they were my darkest thoughts. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I had a different kind of thought process around suicide. I was just going through this process. There were loads of stuff going on in my life. And I was having anxiety attacks, and I was just crying, and I was in pain. And then something happened on the news where I'd read that somebody had taken their life, and then I became obsessed with how did they reach that point. And I didn't want my life to end. I wanted all this pain to stop, and I just didn't know how to process that. And again, it's something that I've spoken about in my book, and there are so many outlets out there to be able to support you through that. And thankfully, on several occasions, they've passed for me. But yeah, that self-talk is huge.
Oh goodness, I mean, Jono, it's very heavy and it's very raw. And for anyone listening, it's very rare you find someone like Jono that is able to speak so concisely about your own experiences. But what I found so amazing about the book is that you're talking about your experiences, yet on nearly every few pages there's something to help the reader. You wrote a book basing your experiences on how to transform other people's lives with your experience. That is a gift. And I felt the tools and actions that you were able to help readers with. I think I even wrote back to you saying that's what I found. I couldn't quite process that you were sharing almost like an autobiography in a way, of your life and these definitive moments that were happening to you, yet you were thinking of someone reading that and how they would perceive that and what they can do with that. What inspired that aspect of, is that quite healing for you as well, to be able to do that?
Everything that I do in life, I kind of think of the wider impact that it'd have. And I'm very aware that even today, and this conversation can impact somebody's life in such a significant, profound way. And I would never, ever take that for granted. And then I was given the opportunity to write my book, which in itself was just amazing.
That's amazing.
I was like, no way, this is just mad. And then I was writing the book. It almost came natural that I didn't want the book just to be about me. I didn't want people just to read my life. I wanted people to have things to take away. And those were really, really important with me, and my whole team that supported me writing the book. These ideas and like, oh, we're going to put them on in boxes and we're just going to make it a specific thing rather than it just being lost in text. And I love those little exercises.
I also found it very healing reading your book in a way that you started this conversation at the beginning of the podcast as well. We mentioned magazines, we mentioned body image, and we mentioned this bizarre societal norm of not seeing enough visible differences, of not seeing enough out there of the diversity of the amazing things that we can all contribute to. And I do feel like perhaps now in the world of social media, that is helpful, that we have these platforms to be able to access different people. But I can imagine it's also a difficult thing for you to come out, be so open, honest, have this amazing book, start writing all your feelings down, and then have to deal with strangers on the internet with their opinions. I would love to ask you how you've navigated social media at the same time as navigating this experience of writing a book like this.
Social media is almost a baby, and it's still almost maybe in infancy to us all, and we're all trying to learn what social media has become. It's how we date, it's how we work, it's how we socialise, it's how we get our information. It's 24-hour news, 24-hour entertainment, and then the following 24 hours it's changed and there's another trend, and we're all trying to keep up with it. And when I did a BBC documentary years ago, and I was so pumped, we'd been filming for 9 months and they were with me for 9 months every day, just filming. It was insane. And I'm just so excited. And then we did some promotion for it, and it went online. All these adverts, TV show coming out later tonight. And then I started reading the comments, and that was my first exposure of negative comments, of trolls. And a lot of it was, I was with my partner at the time, it was now an ex, and you were like, why is she with him? And I was like, ooh. And then all of a sudden that excitement went to fear. And I was like, okay. And I wasn't prepared for it. I was completely unprepared for what was about to happen. The TV show programme was a huge success, hugely popular. Yeah. But then people started making jokes. There was another time where somebody said, hey, Jono, you're on this website, The Joys of Being Famous. And I clicked through to this website, and it was a joke page, and people made jokes of the topic of the day, and I was the topic of the day, and there were just hundreds and hundreds of jokes being made about myself. And it just hurt. And I think one of the hardest things was that I had thought a lot of those comments that I was reading once upon a time, and then for other people to be saying that, it just cut so deep. But thankfully I'd reached a place where I was able to talk about my feelings. And
able to know that those people are the people that are hurting.
100%. And I go into schools, and this is one of the things that I taught to the students at schools, is I once thought that my face would prevent me from finding happiness. But it's not. It's attitudes like that the bullies possess that's going to prevent him from happiness, from finding love, work, friendships. And I genuinely feel sorry for those trolls and bullies. But it's still, there's those moments where it hurts, but thankfully I'm able to be in such a good place where I'm able to move on from it. And the world is catching up. Certain comments now are classed as hate crimes, and the police are taking more serious action against internet trolls, which is amazing. But more still needs to be done.
A lot more needs to be done.
Yes.
And one fear that I have is the future generations growing up with social media. So we were I'm probably older than you actually, but we were quite lucky, I think, not having those platforms from such a young age. I wonder how do you think that would have impacted you to not just have the magazines, but have this there any time of day, to have these image-based platforms?
Again, for me personally, I have quite an addictive personality. I can become obsessed with things, and social media is very, very good as well at seeing things that we've liked or we've looked at.
Oh, yeah.
And then if all of a sudden you see the perfect face, and that's what I would have, as a teenager, and that's all I was seeing. And, as a child, when I had a rough day at school, I was able to go to a safe place, which was my house, my bedroom. And I still had to live with this up here, but I was still safe on the outside. Whereas, again, youngsters now, as phones, as laptops, go into those safe places, and there is no such thing now as a safe place. And then when I go into schools and I talk to the students, they're all posting images on whatever platform, and all of a sudden they've only got 10 likes, so they'll take it down and they'll put some makeup on, or they'll show some more skin, or they'll do something more flamboyant, and then it's got 20 likes, and then that's not good enough, my mate's got 50 likes, so they'll take it down and then they'll do something even more extreme, and then all of a sudden it's got 50 likes, and it's like, that's what I need to go going forward. It's dangerous. It really is. It
is dangerous. I attended a talk with the NSPCC the other week on child safety online. And I think in a few years, hopefully, like you said, there's new tools coming in. But it's still such a space to navigate, because you've openly discussed the fact that you placed a lot of emphasis at one point on getting the perfect body. You said, right, so I'm living with Treacher Collins, and that way I'm going to move my focus on anywhere else I can as a coping strategy. But it didn't work in the best way for you doing that either, did it?
Oh, man. So I had this throughout my entire life, and again, it helped me write the book. I imagine scenarios in my head all the time, and I imagine conversation that's going on around me and stuff. And I thought, if anybody is going to be in a relationship with me, they need a reason. And this isn't the reason why they're going to date me. So I'm like, okay, if my face ain't all that, I need to have the perfect body. So all of a sudden, I became obsessed with diet, exercise. I even dehydrated myself to try and have abs 24/7, sunbeds. And then okay, I'm doing all this stuff. I would spend all my money on designer clothes. And I'm like, okay, if two people are having a conversation, why are you dating Jono? The other person who's dating me would be like, well, his face ain't all that, but he's got an amazing body. And he just gives and gives. Again, the lack of personal boundaries. So, yeah, that's why I'm dating him. And then, all right, okay, I get it now. And again, I'm that self-talk. I'm having that self-talk with myself of, okay, people will date me if I do these things. And that became life.
Yeah, and everyone can relate to that. That's the thing. I think a lot of the time, a lot of people don't think they are good enough as they are. No, I didn't growing up. I think lots of people don't, and they don't face the additional, condition you had. It's 1 in 50,000, isn't it?
1 in 50,000.
Yeah, which, is an astounding number. So one thing that I love that you've done is looking at the work you've done. Oh my goodness. It makes me emotional when I think about it. But, you've been over to America. You have made such a difference to so many other people. You've met lots of other people, and you've co-founded a charity. Please share more.
The Love Me, Love My Face Foundation.
Special.
And I was so scared to set that up. I've had ideas for so long, and I've got 3 friends who just like, yeah, we'll support you, and they all became trustees, and they all went through the red tape with me and got us officially registered, and I'm incredibly proud of them all. So basically, I'd done my BBC documentary, and I started sharing and stuff, and I was like, I love my face, and I found as well that the more I stripped back of like, I love I love all of this, internally, externally. And then the relationships that I were having from that point forward were just so beautiful and real and deep. And I'm like, I'm onto a winner here. And I get to see a beauty in a world that not many people get to see. And I love it. And I feel very lucky that I'm in this place. So people from all over the world started reaching out to me. And one of the big ones that really resonated with me was like, Jono, I've got a son, a daughter, they've got Treacher Collins, they're questioning life, they're going through this, that and the other. And I tried to support them through Facebook and stuff. And then those relationships grew and they're like, oh, Jono, we'd really love to meet you. And I was like, okay, let's make it happen. So I started travelling around the UK. Then I went to Australia, New Zealand, all around the States, Mexico.
It's amazing.
South America. And I was just spending time with these people. And then when I visited Australia and New Zealand, and I was meeting individuals that had Treacher Collins, and I was able to support them emotionally, but they weren't able to afford a hearing aid due to health insurance and stuff. And I came away just really saddened that geography was a big factor, that they weren't able to get the support that they needed. And I did a layover in an airport, and this airport had a waterfall in it and like gold-plated toilets. And I just sat on this gold-plated toilet and I just cried like, why is the world so broken? And
the world is broken.
And I got home and I said this to my friends. I can support them emotionally, but I want to do more. And they're like, okay, let's set the charity up. So all these kids that I've met, we're now able to support them with medical needs. And I love it. It's just a beautiful thing. And the biggest, most empowering thing that we do is we connect families. And the opportunity, being able to give somebody the opportunity for them to meet somebody just like them for the first time ever, that's pretty massive, you know.
It's making me well up. I mean, as a parent myself, I can't know, but if it was my children, I would want them to meet other children so they didn't feel alone. And I think that's incredible what you've done. I knew I was going to go in this episode. I knew it, but in happy tears, in that kind of way, for what you've done. And I think for anyone listening, where can they go to learn more about the charity, and what can they support?
So we're on Instagram and Facebook, and there's 4 of us. We all do it in a spare time. Send us a message. We're doing all sorts of projects, and like I said, the biggest thing is next year we're setting up a big get together for all the families with Treacher Collins in the UK. We did it last year. We're going to do it next year, and just all can hang out. And it's not just the individuals as well. A sibling that's growing up with a brother or sister with a medical condition is going through so many challenges and so many emotions. And then to be able to sit down with another sibling that's going through that stuff. Hey, what do you do when your brother or sister gets bullied at school? Or what do you do when your brother and sister's having an operation and you've got to go and do this? And for them to have a conversation is just empowering. And then again, dads chat. Or we get all the dads in a room.
Good.
And we're just like, come on, let's talk.
Let's talk.
The conversations that have gone on in those rooms, oh man, it's been life-changing and empowering for them all. And so I'm incredibly proud of being able to give that.
But how do you protect yourself in the sense of, I've also seen sad stories when you lose people you love on your page on social media, and you've been supporting families through such tough times. How do you keep your boundaries? Because you're such a giving person. You've mentioned already that, you're a people pleaser, you will give, and being empathetic is the most amazing trait I think someone can have, but you carry it.
Yeah, I carry it massively. I mean, there's separate things. This year has been a really, really heavy year. The Treacher Collins community has had quite a few... We've lost quite a few people this year in unexpected circumstances. And my dear friend, Dr. Francis Smith, who passed away,
Yeah.
he loved London, and I was on the tube coming through to the studio today.
Don't tell me he loved the tube.
He loved the tube, and typical American, he had the canvas with all the
Sweet.
the tube things, and I was like, and there is sadness there because they're no longer here, but there was a lot of happy memories of like, he loved London, and it was so amazing to come here. And it's bizarre that you mentioned that, because I was thinking about him as I walked through the tube. So yes, I do carry that. And then with the Treacher Collins community, or when I go into schools and talk, or even on social media, people offload a lot of things with me. And I do carry that around. And over recent years, that's something that I've really had to work on with my therapist, of being able to be empathetic and being able to be supportive, but also being able to protect myself.
So hard.
And then there's another element in that as well of, it's weird for me to say that people do look up to me.
Yeah.
And I felt like, I need to be this positive person, or like, if Jono can do it, so can I. And that was a really heavy pressure for me as well. And a few years ago, I did a talk, and it was just after the time I had those suicidal thoughts, and I was looking for the out in my kitchen and whatever, and the past. And I did a conference, and I shared that with them. And it was one of the best conferences that I've ever done. People came up to me afterwards, and they were like, Jono, you've always been that light at the end of the tunnel. If Jono can do it, we can do it.
Yeah.
But at times it was like, how? And what you've just shared today, all that vulnerability and all that pain, you're just so more relatable. And we were talking about healing. There is no end destination. It's forever just coming and going. So yeah, that's something that I've had to work really, really hard on. And I'm in a much better place with dealing with that. But there's a beautiful quote, be who you needed when you were younger.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. And when I think about that, I'm like, yeah.
It's beautiful. And I guess the last question before there's so many questions from listeners, there's not enough time to delve into everything. But the question is, can you tell us a little bit about little Jay? And can you share the work you've done with your inner child? And I think that everyone needs to hear it. Everyone. It would help so many people. It's big. It's big.
It's big.
Take a breath.
For a large chunk of my life, especially as a youngster, I said the most horrible things to myself. And again, as a child, just standing in the front of the mirror and pushing my own eyes up, my own face up, to try and make it look like everybody else's. Not only did I say things, I did things to myself that were just horrible. And then as an adult, I was talking to myself with kindness and with love. And I went through a breakup a few years ago, and it triggered a lot of like rejection and abandonment. And I was like, I'm such a nice person. Why does this happen to me?
Yeah. Oh my God, breakups suck. Yeah.
Breakups suck.
They do.
And I've been through breakups in the past, and this one felt different, and it triggered a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I sat down and I spoke about it, and they were like, okay, there's a lot of stuff inside that's still there when it comes to rejection and abandonment. And they were like, you need to spend some time with your inner child. You need to imagine them. And when you imagine them, you need to talk to them. How did they feel when you did this? How did they feel when you did that? Or when you said that to yourself? And listen to what they're saying. And then now, what can you do to make it better? And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then in order to help me, I got one of my old teddies, and I put one of my old rugby jerseys on that I used to wear when I was match day mascot for my beloved Featherstone Rovers. And he became Little J. He is Little J. Yeah. And I went on a road trip with him. First time I was doing it, I was like, oh, I'm going to it. So I were in car for 2 hours, got me coffee and me snacks, and I sat little Jay next to me, seated him, seatbelt on, and set off. And I went straight into it. Why do we keep on getting rejected? And I just like cried, and then some music came on, Radiohead, Creep, and I was just bawling. And it's one of my favourite songs now, but just bawling.
Yeah.
And then I had this light bulb moment, and I was like, little Jay, we have attracted so many beautiful things in our life by being our true, authentic self.
Yes.
We're a pretty cool guy. And, that self-talk was amazing. And then when I think about myself as a child now, I used to cut my own hair and give him the dodgy bowl cut. The girls that I fancied, I used to write them love poems. And I would listen to Celine Dion and I'm going to find love like that she sings about. And he was such a sweet kid.
Yeah.
And he had such a good heart. And he was a class clown, and he back-chatted the teachers, and he turned his hearing aid off when my mum was shouting him. And I was such a good kid, and I love him so much. Yeah. And it was funny because I narrated my book, and I took little Jay with me. And it took me a full weekend to narrate my book.
That's hard, narrating your book.
It is hard.
Whoa.
You've done it 4 times, right?
Yeah, but no, but it's not my part. Your book is personal.
But I don't know how you'd be able to create it in a therapy session, but I'm recording my book, and I had little Jay in the studio with me, listening to all our traumas, all our healing, all our growth, the heroes that we've met along the way, and ultimately becoming the biggest hero in our own lives. Oh my God, it was pretty special and healing, and I was very lucky to be able to do that.
Oh, Jono. Oh, how to even put the words. There's one thing that you've said, and we have got questions from our listeners. I will get to them, I promise. But as you say, a lot of people want things from you, and I think it's so important to be vulnerable and honest and say, look, I don't have it all sussed out in life.
Definitely don't have it all sussed out. No,
because people want to know. But something you also said at the start is that the world isn't a kind place. And it's something I also struggle with massively. I don't understand this world sometimes. But you can't, things that you cannot control, it's difficult to come to the self-acceptance that not everyone out there is going to see the world in the way you do. We've all got different experiences. But I think this particular question leads on from that nicely. Mia has said, my son is being bullied at school. What can I say or do? I just feel so helpless. And I'm sure you hear this one a lot as well. The world isn't kind all the time. But it seems so unjust, doesn't it, for children?
It's tough. There's 2 points. And was it Mia's question? Mia. Me and my mum have had a lot of conversations around this, and she was like, oh, if I'd have known, I would have been able to support you and stuff like that. And I used to talk to my mum about everything, and then as I got older in my teenage years, I stopped talking to my mum. And I kind of put a wall up. I didn't talk to my friends because it wasn't cool to talk about my face. I didn't talk to the teachers around because I thought I'd get into trouble. And the truth is, and if anybody's going through some bullying situation, your friends will listen, your guardians will listen, your boss, your teacher, they will listen. And then as for the mum, and it's something that I've said to my mum, it wasn't necessarily the words that she said to me. It wasn't, because at times these people that you talk to, they don't have the answers, but what they do have is presence. And being present in somebody's life, or for me anyway, was absolutely amazing. My friends might have not been able to fix certain situations, but I had them in my life. My mum wasn't able to stop whatever was going on, but she was present in my life, and that is just amazing. It's incredible.
There's so much power in our voices, but as children, I guess we're not empowered yet, with that